The absolute best picks in Dynasty rookie drafts this year. We're going to give you 7 or 8 guys here that we think at price, given the circumstances, are the best picks in Dynasty this year when you're making your rookie draft. So do us a huge favor, drop a like, make sure you're subscribed. We have to start this video by acknowledging, because I think it'd be stupid not to. Last year on this video, we had some hits. We also had some misses on this video last year, and I think we can learn a couple things here. I think the hits were obviously Cam Scadaboo, Bashal Tootin, and Jackson Dart. Those were 3 of our favorite players last year to draft in rookie drafts. All 3 of them hit. I think there may have been one more that was neutral or something like that. Some of the misses we had on there. Jaden Blue was a 3rd-round pick. Terrence Ferguson was a 3rd-round pick. They were misses, but they were dart throws anyway, so we don't feel usually that bad about missing on dart throws. Jaden Blue especially didn't really even do anything. But we had Travion Henderson on there, and Travion was technically at a time a hit. I would say now he's a little bit less valuable than he was. He definitely wasn't one of the best last year, so you could call that a miss. And then Travis Hunter, obviously the move to draft Travis Hunter last year anywhere, we had him in a tier from the 103 to the 107 last year. He hasn't returned on that value at least yet. So while I wouldn't call Travis Hunter a bust or a complete miss yet, he obviously wasn't one of the best picks last year. And so try to learn from our mistakes this year, try to get better, and try to give you some guys that we think truly are some of the best picks in Dynasty drafts this year. Now, the first one, we have to have a discussion, like an actual heart-to-heart discussion on this one, because what I'm seeing is going way too far here with Jadarian Price. I completely understand everything that everybody is saying, being skeptical about Jadarian Price. Skeptical about Jadarian Price. I made up a word. And what the skeptics are saying, let's just start with the case against Jadarian Price as a good Dynasty rookie pick this year. What the skeptics are saying is this. Jadarian Price goes into an offense where you just saw Kenneth Walker average, 10 points per game, splitting with Zach Charbonnet. He's not as good as Kenneth Walker. We don't have any receiving upside there. He's small. He's not fast. So you put all those pieces together with him and you say, okay, so he doesn't have a pass-catching profile, a receiving skill set that you saw showcased at Notre Dame. He is going to an offense where very clearly they have split up the workload last year. So what's his ceiling even? Like, his ceiling is going to be completely capped, right? So I understand all of that about Jadarian Price. And I think there is a fine line between being cautious about Jadarian Price's profile and then being a skeptic to the point where you're actually just spouting nonsense. Because I've seen a lot of nonsense about Jadarian Price on the timeline. Just not going to lie about that. There's a lot of nonsense floating around about Jadarian Price. And I think the number one question you have to ask yourself here, and you really can't answer this if you are spouting nonsense. If all of that was true and they just planned to put him in the Kenneth Walker role, not getting any red zone touches, not getting any receiving work, he's, very limited, whatever. If all of that was true, the Super Bowl winning organization that just drafted in the first round, why did that organization, who put together a Super Bowl winning roster, mind you,
and just won because of Kenneth Walker in a lot of ways, and let him walk, Walker,
why did that organization spend a first-round pick on a running back that they plan to put in a role where they're not going to give him red zone, they're not going to give him receiving? I mean, there are people out there acting like he's not going to get the ball. I understand the profile, right? You're looking at his bakery score. I understand this. First of all, he was our running back 2. He's the running back 2 in the bakery. And again, really the only guy that was in the same tier as him with first-round draft capital from a production perspective was Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs was a hit. The problem with his profile, obviously, is his production or lack thereof is bringing it down because he was the running back 2 behind Jeremiah Love, the best running back in this class, the best prospect in this class, most likely for dynasty purposes, absolutely. And a Heisman Trophy candidate. And so it is bringing down some of his metrics here. His receiver dominator rating in the bakery, his input's pretty low for that. A little bit of a lower breakout age as well. But when you're looking at everything else, missed tackles forced per attempt, elusivity, yards after contact per attempt, all of this grades out pretty well. Even dominator rating, he grades out in the middle of the road, which is really impressive, considering the fact that, again, at best he was sharing a backfield, but really when you watch the second half of Notre Dame season last year, he wasn't. And so a dose of skepticism, especially for the lack of receiving work that we saw from Jadarian Price, I think is totally warranted. The other guy that you can look at here and say, okay, you don't really see in this class, especially that you don't see a ton of receiving work from this guy, is Kaytron Allen. 3.6% receiver dominator rating from Kaytron Allen this last year, and then it was 2.84% for Jadarian Price. And so everybody's skeptical about the receiving upside here. Do you want to know what they have in common, those two backs? What do they have in common, Nate? Kaytron Allen, Jadarian Price, why do they both have limited receiving skill sets or receiving production?
They were splitting.
Okay.
They weren't quite. Katron was splitting a backfield. Price was the backup to Heisman candidate Jeremiah Love.
So before we go off and say that Jadarian Price doesn't have receiving upside and can't catch the ball, and I'm not saying he's a plus receiver because he's clearly not, but acting like he cannot do that and that's not in his game whatsoever, you're just telling on yourself that you didn't really understand what was happening last year at Notre Dame. Nathan's right. It wasn't even a split backfield. At the end of the year, he was the backup. And the fact of the matter is, even Jeremiah Love had a receiver-dominated rating of 9.5%, or 9.15%. Even that was low. Among top running backs, that's low. And part of that was because, number one, not a ton in the offensive scheme where you're seeing them throw to their running backs at Notre Dame. Number two, again, he was the backup to Love. So that does not mean he is not going to get any receiving work in the NFL. The fact of the matter is, I also don't think it's a good idea to blindly point to first-round hit rates and say this guy is, he's going to slam dunk hit because first-round running backs always hit. I also think it's stupid to say this guy is Rashad Penny, this guy is Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Sonny Michel. Those three names being thrown out with Price is ridiculous. You are not evaluating Price on an independent basis. You are just matching him to draft capital scenarios where those guys were theoretically overdrafted. But here's the thing. Clyde Edwards-Helaire held significant dynasty value at one point, by the way. He was a value hit. Even though he wasn't Jonathan Taylor, he was technically a value hit because he did go up in value to the point where he was being drafted pretty high.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the people are comparing Price to CEH and Rashad Penny, which Rashad Penny was injured. He was actually great when he was on the field.
Rashad Penny was a beast.
But like, why aren't we comparing him to the guys that got first round draft capital who are in that range as Price? Like, you're just as merited to say that he's the next Josh Jacobs as you are to say that he's the next CEH.
Hampton got drafted in the 20s.
There really is no analytical backing whatsoever to say that these guys are in the same conversation, really, at all. Like, there's. Like, what backing do you have here? CEH was a guy who was actually, his skill set was being a passing down back who had receiving upside and capability there in a Joe Burrow offense where they were passing the ball like crazy. Like, they weren't even comparable from a skill set perspective. They're not even comparable, which again it just brings it back to like, why are we just putting this label on Price and just deciding that's the way that it is? And not to mention, like, I would be, even if Zach Charbonnet was healthy, I would be like, yeah, they could even start the season splitting the backfield there because that's what they did last year, and they want to ease in their rookies. The NFL is so annoying with how they treat their rookies, and the first couple of weeks of the season, they're just in complete denial. Like with Hampton last year and Najee Harris, it was like, are you kidding me? Every time you give Hampton the ball versus Najee Harris, it's like night and day. And then you had to have Najee Harris tear his Achilles, which really unfortunate for him. But again, that should have never even been an issue because you should have just been giving a majority of the carries to Amari and Hampton. With Jadarian Price this year, we don't even have that discussion. We don't even have to have that discussion. Zach Charbonnet tore his ACL in January. We just had, like 5 days ago, Mike McDonald talking about Zach Charbonnet. And I mean, he basically says, yeah, I'm excited for Zach. He's doing a great job in rehab. Yeah, you're really excited about Zach Charbonnet, so you drafted a first-round running back. That's how excited you are about Charbonnet coming off the ACL. And you shouldn't be excited about that. Again, they just let Kenneth Walker walk, who won the Super Bowl MVP, and you spent your first-round pick, the one place you could have... I mean, they could have spent that first-round pick anywhere. They could have bolstered the defensive side of the ball, which was a big reason that they went on their run last year, aside from their run game. I don't get it here, guys. Price at his price. After they let Walker walk, is one of our favorites in the draft this year.
That was the stupidest thing you ever said. But it was well played, though.
Thanks.
But it was stupid. You know it was stupid. Come on, Nathan.
Oh, I was very stupid. Yeah. It just kind of ended up happening.
But it was good, though.
Yeah.
But regardless, I just think the Price hate's being forced right now. And I think what you're seeing is a lack of... People are demonstrating a stubbornness where they don't want to look past... where exactly what draft capital they had late first, and then the fact that he came out and he wasn't the running back. And people don't want to look at the film. The film's good with Price. Stop forcing the Price hate. Price is a good pick from a dynasty value perspective. He's going to maintain his value very well as a first-round running back for multiple years, regardless of how he produces in year one. Fact of the matter is, though, he could become it's a different offense there, by the way. I didn't even mention this. It's not the same offense.
Also true.
You know that Kubiak's not the offensive coordinator there anymore, right?
Yeah.
So who's to say that the new offensive coordinator doesn't just come in and give Jadarian Price 60% of the carries? every backfield in the NFL at this point is virtually a committee backfield. So it's no surprise that he's going to be sharing a backfield there. But to peg him as Kenneth Walker, because that's where he went, and Kenneth Walker was a better prospect. Hey, Kenneth Walker couldn't stay on the field, y'all. Okay, so if Price stays healthy, he's already one step ahead. Okay, so let's just stop forcing the Price hate. Price is one of the best picks this year. I'm sorry, 105, 107, you're taking a first-round running back who really bolstered this range in Dynasty rookie drafts. A long piece of analysis there, but all that to say, Price is being hated on for no reason right now. He is a good prospect. He has a fine analytical profile. We talk about Penny, Harris, CEH, and Michelle. Bernard Price has a better profile than those guys, analytically, as a backup. So let's all show some Price love in the comments. I'll show some price appreciation. Again, watch the dude's film and tell me he's not going to be a good NFL running back. And maybe he won't. Fact of the matter is, from a dynasty value perspective, I don't care. He's going to maintain, and if he does anything at all this year, he'll go up in value. Price is one of the best picks in Dynasty rookie drafts this year.
So I think another kind of misconception this year, which I'm going to go out front and say I completely understand it, because you've got a tight end room in LA on the Rams side where they have invested second-round draft capital in a tight end before, actually like the year before, in Terrence Ferguson, and you go out there the following year and you look at their tight end depth chart, and it is really, really ugly because it's just the ball is spread around like crazy. Colby Parkinson, Terrence Ferguson, Tyler Higbee, and Davis Allen literally all had a good number of touchdowns last season and had, a productive game here or there, but it was kind of spread out all over the place. While I understand the concern with Max Clare being a second-round pick at the tight end position a year after Ferguson just went and did absolutely nothing for your teams last year, it is a little bit of a different story in my opinion. Number one, just because you spend second-round draft capital on a tight end the year before doesn't mean that the second-round draft capital tight end that you invested in this year is going to get the exact same amount of limited usage. See Michael Mayer, for example, right? If you remember Michael Mayer, he was drafted in the second round. People loved him as a prospect. He showed a little bit of promise his rookie season. They go draft over him with Brock Bowers because they liked the talent better, right? You had an elite level prospect in Brock Bowers, who actually was a first round pick, drafted over Michael Mayer, who Michael Mayer is a prospect, nothing wrong with him. He actually, every time he gets opportunities, looks pretty decent. If he were in any other situation in the NFL, he'd be an interesting guy. He's not anymore, and he won't be for the foreseeable future because he's stuck behind a guy like Brock Bowers. To me, to a much, much, much lesser degree, I see a very, very similar type of thing here in LA, where you see a guy like Terrence Ferguson, who is by far objectively an inferior analytical prospect. And I do think that his receiving chops and capabilities are a little bit inferior to a guy like Max Clare as well, and what we were able to see at Ohio State this past season. When you stack up Max Clare in the bakery to some of the other prospects that were going in that range, in that green tier, you've got a couple of tight end ones, like elite upside tight ends in Sam Laporta and Trey McBride, and then you have, ironically, Michael Mayer and Mason Taylor. Mason Taylor was another example of that this year. If you remember, Mason Taylor last year had second-round draft capital, good analytics, drafted over this year because of Kenyon Sadiq, who is available at the Jets pick at 16. So they're like, you know what? The gap between Kenyon Sadiq and Mason Taylor is significant enough that we're just going to take him, draft him over Mason Taylor, and we're going to use Mason Taylor probably primarily as a blocking tight end is what we would anticipate. In this situation for the Rams, I don't think it's that Sean McVay is obsessed with spreading the ball around when it comes to his tight ends. I think what they've been trying to do is, for the last couple of years, by signing Colby Parkinson, by extending Tyler Higbee after one good year, by drafting Terrence Ferguson in the second, and now drafting Max Clare in the second, Sean McVay's on the search for an elite tight end that he can really lean on consistently for the foreseeable future. And while I think it's far, far, far from a guarantee that Max Clare ends up being that for you and ends up being that for us in Dynasty, I do think it's a pretty good shot to take when you're getting him at mid-second round prices. In our personal rankings, we have him ranked in the early second because his analytics and the company that he's in at the tight end position, according to the bakery, is so good. And honestly, that's a great situation. If he were to command like 60% of the tight end volume in that offense, he would be a startable tight end every single week. Like, just aside from all of that, like at mid-second round prices, which is where he's going often, and even falling to the late second sometimes, you're getting the best analytical shot in the second round, objectively. with the exception of maybe Jonah Coleman if he falls to the second round in your drafts. So, and that he's also going to be in this video. I think Claire, again, like this is one where people are just really like, it's very, very obvious. It's very, very clear. And I totally understand it. The reason Max Claire is falling so far is they're seeing the second round draft capital and they're saying we've been down this road, we've done this rodeo with Terrence Ferguson the year before, therefore he's going to be exactly what Terrence Ferguson was this year. And I think we're comparing two totally different prospects who have two totally different potential outlooks here. I really do think that we do. And again, with Matt Stafford coming back after just winning an MVP, throwing 45 touchdowns last year, Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams were both wide receiver ones. And then you had those tight ends where combined, they actually together ended up having a ton of production there. There is volume opportunity remaining for those tight ends. It just is a matter of, can Max Claire work his way up the depth chart? And I don't think the Rams are a type of organization or a type of team that's like, hey, let's just throw away our draft capital and throw away our picks on guys that we think are going to be role players that we only want to use a couple times a game. I think they're pretty serious about their second round picks. They're serious about selecting Terrence Ferguson last year. And while it's not over for Terrence Ferguson and he could still develop long term, I do think they saw a guy like Claire in the second round this year and they're like, we might as well just try it again with him this year and see if he ends up getting more opportunities. So again, in a class like 2026, you would see in most other classes and deeper classes, Claire would be a third round selection and we would love him at that price as well. I know it looks ugly and it sounds ugly in the second round this year, but this is a totally different second round that we're talking about compared to most normal classes because half of your second round selections are in the JAG developmental range. And Max Claire has a really, really good shot at being, again, a solid upside shot to start the season.
Yeah, and I have to, again, acknowledge, like, I was a big Terrence Ferguson guy, and part of that was I just loved the situation for Terrence Ferguson. And he had some flashes, but that was a miss for me. I mean, I have a lot of Terrence Ferguson, so I'm willing to re-roll with Max Claire. And again, talking specifically about Dynasty hit rates, he just does have a higher implied hit rate than some of those wide receivers that went round 3 and 4 that were drafting astronomically high this year, and round 6 running backs and things like that. I think that's what makes him a good pick. Now, one of the running backs that wasn't drafted super early or particularly early that I actually really do like is Jonah Coleman. We just released our running back rankings video today. We're recording this on Wednesday. And I think that from what I saw, the top comment in the video is that we were sleeping on Coleman. And I'm not sure where else we could have ranked him. We ranked him in his own tier behind Price. And I think we are. And also, we've had Coleman on our My Guys video and our Sleepers video. So I don't know. I personally don't know how much.
There ain't no sleeping. I had him as a My Guy.
No, it's one of Nathan's guys. Like, so absolutely we're not sleeping on Coleman. And Coleman goes here, we went in the 4th round of the NFL draft, and all-time he is 7th among 4th-round running backs drafted in the Baker. When you're looking at guys in this upside tier that were drafted in the 4th round, it's the highest tier you can get to with 4th-round draft capital, or we've never seen anybody get higher. Scadaboo was the first ever last year, which is why we were screaming from the rooftops that he was a good draft pick. Braylon Allen, Bucky Irving, Bashal Tutin, Jarquez Hunter, Ramondre, and then Jonah Coleman. The two guys below him, Isaiah Spiller and Michael Carter. Now, it's a mix of guys here that were pushed down draft boards, drafted in the 2nd round, 3rd round, a lot of these guys that ended up hitting and should have been drafted higher. And then you have guys like Michael Carter, Isaiah Spiller, even to some extent Jarquez Hunter, Braylon Allen, who were drafted high enough, 2-3 turn, and didn't do squat. Almost certainly those are the two outcomes for Jonah Coleman. He's going to be one of those two. What I look at when I'm looking at Jonah Coleman is, he is listed in the bakery as a bell calf, a 3-down back, and he does have 220-pound size here. He is a little bit short. He's 5'8". But again, schematically, when you're looking at Jonah Coleman, the reason I like him is because, number one, I don't think Sean Payton would have taken him, and I'm not falling for the Joker crap, and I'm not falling for he's the guy in the 3rd down and blah, blah, blah. You know, what's interesting is RJ Harvey last year, as much as we crap on him, was a top 10 receiving back in the NFL last year from an efficiency standpoint and from a volume standpoint. And so even though he did not get a lot of carries there and wasn't efficient on the ground, he played a very clear role in that offense. And I'm not necessarily sure that Jonah Coleman is coming in to replace that role. When you're looking at Jonah Coleman in college, he had a pretty modest, actually I did have a good receiving profile here. 11.8% was his receiving dominator rating. And so he obviously has that skill set. And so a lot of people are making the argument that Coleman may be replacing Harvey. Maybe he is. I'm not sure. I think the number one thing you can look at with Coleman that you can't with Harvey is the pass protection is much better with Jonah Coleman. And so that could get him on the field for passing reps. But is it for pass protection? Is it a Kalen Black, where the 49ers probably drafted Kalen Black for pass protection? But Coleman is talented enough as a prospect, and from an analytical standpoint, he's talented enough to where I think he could make a dent in that running back room. Whether he is going to be the Dobbins replacement when Dobbins inevitably gets injured,
That's what I would wager.
or whether he's replacing RJ Harvey or a combination of both. I don't know. But I do think it's a good bet. I think no matter which way you look at this, no matter which angle you try to tackle this from, the Broncos running back room is wide open. From a positional dominance standpoint, J.K. Dobbins, again, is on, I think, 1-year extension right now. And he consistently misses time. It's been the number one thing in his career. He obviously was an elite running back prospect himself and just hasn't been able to stay healthy. And RJ Harvey, again, great receiving back and had, I think, 12 touchdowns last year. But at the same time, does not really showcase any between the tackles skill set at all.
Everything that he showcased in college from a film perspective was exactly the same.
And most of the stuff that he showcased in college,
he bounces it outside.
And most of that didn't really work last year. Like he wasn't really able to do that and have a super high success rate. Again,
their run game took a massive step back when Dobbins went down, and they can't afford that again this year.
It 100% did. And so, he had 4 breakaway runs last year. He was 41st in breakaway runs. And so, again, nothing crazy there. But again, 6th in yards per route run, 8th in targets, 8th in receiving yards, 8th in receptions, 10th in total touchdown, 5th in fantasy points per opportunity. Harvey didn't have as bad a year as I think people are saying he did. And we like the prospect profile of Jonah Coleman. So, the fact of the matter is, Coleman is one of the only guys this year that we've actually moved up so far. We did our initial rookie rankings on Saturday. And as the week's kind of gone on, we have moved him up a tier. He's now in a tier with, I think he's in a tier with Max Clare and Denzel Boston for us. So that basically says
Stowers is in that tier too.
Stowers is in the tier above that with Simpson at the moment.
Oh yeah.
At this point, we are fine taking Coleman at the end of the first round, early second. I think a 4th round running back. I think even you've seen recently that these guys are hitting at a higher rate than, again, 3rd round wide receivers. 3rd and 4th round wide receivers are some of the worst picks in Dynasty fantasy football rookie drafts.
Yeah.
And so I'd much rather take a shot on a running back that has, again, an intriguing situation. You have a number of those guys this year. Nick Singleton in Tennessee, Katron Allen in Washington. A number of these guys went to situations where they theoretically could do some damage there. And so with Jonah Coleman, I think that's why he's one of the best picks for us. It's obviously still a dart throw with a 4th round running back, and you're taking him earlier than you'd like to. But 4th round running backs Cam Scatterbull and Bashal Tutin in the same exact bakery tier were also going early second, and you see Coleman going early second quite a bit. And so that's actually priced in where he normally would be priced. I'm okay taking him there, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I'm okay taking him there. And I think he's a good pick this year at price. Right now, I think he's one of the better shots analytically. So it's worth... We're going to talk about the next running back in a wide open situation right after this. Again, it's our last chance. If you want to join Domain and get 2 free team blueprints, we are ending this sale this week. So make sure you grab code Domain annual Mother Flocker tier. You're going to get our entire Rookie Draft Suite 2 team blueprints, our Rookie Draft Analyzer tool, the entire Bakery database, all of our flock tools, trade calculator rankings, the Domain Discord, Domain Leagues, all of that and more. You can come join the community. Again, last time we're running the sale in all of 2026, and who knows when the next time we'll run this is. So take advantage while we still got it. Code Domain annual Mother Flocker tier is the way to go, and it does get you those 2 free team blueprints for a limited time. We'll probably end the sale tomorrow. So, okay.
Again, I don't think it can be overstated. Real quick on the last thing with Coleman, the 4 running backs ranked over Jonah Coleman in the upside tier on the Bakery are Cam Scatterbull, Bashal Tutin, Bucky Irving, and Braylon Allen. We'll say that so many times this offseason.
Yep. All right. The other guy that has situational upside that we didn't go in the 4th, but we're warming up to taking him, especially mid-second here.
Yeah, he did go in the 5th. I remember this has been such a saga with Singleton, and now finally he's on an NFL team. If you remember, before he ended up deciding to go back to Penn State, back in the class of 2025. We were heavy advocates for Singleton, and you don't want to fade him too much. Ended up going back to school. This year, he looked worse his last year at Penn State than he did the year prior. I don't think he did his draft stock any favors, not to mention he tacked on an extra year. He's now 22, and he'll be 22 and a half around when the season starts. But with Singleton, going to the 5th round of the Tennessee Titans is actually one of the best ambiguous landing spots that you could ask for when you're talking about his long-term potential upside there. And if he really could make a dent in that running back room as early as this year. And no, he's not. The reason we have Coleman ranked ahead of Singleton is analytically, you got that upside light tier, which is right below the upside tier that Jonah Coleman is in. The hit rates are... They do take a bit of a negative hit, not a good hit, in that upside light tier where Nick Singleton is compared to the company that Jonah Coleman is in. And that, again, is why we're going to that's why we ended up deciding to separate them by a tier. All that to say, though, Tyjae Spears is a consistently banged up running back who has a receiving skill set. He's essentially a RJ Harvey with like better rushing capability in theory. That's debatable. And then Tony Pollard, who has been around for a really, really long time here. And they I think, have made it very clear that long-term, they don't really want him to be the long-term option. Interestingly enough, Tony Pollard has had 4 straight 1,000+ yard rushing seasons. He does get a lot of work in that offense. So when you're talking about the rushing opportunity in Tennessee, there's a lot of opportunity there for Nick Singleton if he can work his way up the depth chart here. And again, with a 3rd round running back that they took a shot on a couple years ago who has no ACL and is heading into, I believe, the 4th year of his rookie deal in Tyjae Spears, they're going to let him walk. And Tony Pollard, again, is nearing the end of his rookie contract or of his contract with Tennessee, and they're going to let him walk eventually. This is, again, with a 5th round running back, there's no guarantee that he's not going to be replaced long term. In fact, with Nick Singleton's skill set and not being a great between the tackles runner and being kind of an explosive change of pace receiving back, primarily is how he was utilized last year. He could easily be replaced with an elite caliber prospect next year. I mean, if you look at the running backs in 2027, at least the ones that we expect to be available, as long as they don't, go back to school, it's looking a lot better than this year. There's always that possibility, right? But when you're talking about value wins and value upside opportunity in the 2nd round of this year's class, Nick Singleton is one of the best shots that you can take in the mid-2nd round. Because again, this is something that we tried to warn you guys about before the draft even happened. We literally said word for word, there are going to be multiple day 3 running backs that are drafted in this year's 2nd round because the depth of the class is so bad. There are insurance plays. There are day 3 insurance plays that are going in the 2nd round of this year's draft that don't have near the value upside heading into the start of the season this year as Nick Singleton and Jonah Coleman do. Those are the 2 guys that went day 3 this year where immediately they have an opportunity to they have an opportunity to take over that backfield and not even get 70% of the snaps. If Singleton ends up being number 2 on the depth chart, if Tyjae Spears struggles with injury, which historically he has, again, this is one where you're looking at Singleton getting a 20 to 30% value increase immediately before he even starts getting increased snap share. The moment it's announced that Nick Singleton's work is going to increase this week because this injury happened, or they're going to try out some new things because they drafted him in the 5th round and they want to see what he can do, and he's shown juice. He's got some juice in limited situations. This is. Again, this is the game that we play every single year. I think we have to work really, really hard as a Dynasty community to have foresight in May, looking ahead to August, right? What are the big news bits that we love to gravitate towards when training camp comes? We love 1st round validation, 1st round draft capital validation. We're going to love the hype about Carnell Tate and Jordan Tyson. We're going to absolutely love it. We're going to eat it up. We also love the risers. We also love the risers for day 3. What running back specifically? Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt was a big example last year. We love to kind of overplay some of the negative news for guys that we think were reaches. So you might actually see a little bit of that with Jadarian Price in training camp. You might see some people that want to dog on Jadarian Price and say, oh, he's taking 2nd team snaps today because Emmanuel Wilson's taking 1st team snaps, but then it switches the next day, right? This is what we have to anticipate. And in an open backfield, we would categorize this as an open backfield long-term for Tennessee. This is one where every single running back in that room is going to get opportunity, and it's probably going to be an even split in training camp, and they're going to try Singleton out. And the moment Nick Singleton gets 1st team reps in training camp, it's game over. It's game over, and you already got a value in before he even steps on the field.
Jeremy Bernard is one that we've been consistently drafting ourselves, and it's not anything to do with the prospect, Jeremy Bernard, or his ceiling or anything like that, because people want to mention, well, Jeremy has a very capped ceiling. Well, yes. I mean, I was very, very skeptical of Jeremy Bernard as a prospect. And again, it's all about price. It's not about the player. The player, Jeremy Bernard, I understand he's extremely limited. I understand that in college he ran a bunch of dig routes. His efficiency on dig routes was through the roof. But outside of that, he's very limited. He's more of a gadget guy. He's used pretty creatively. I understand all that.
I'm skeptical before he was the only guy that went in the 2nd.
I was going to say, the problem is with Jeremy, we're taking these 3rd and 4th round wide receivers over a guy who went here in the 2nd round. And people want to point out, okay, you are using the 2nd round draft capital argument for Jeremy Bernard, but you won't use it for DeJon Stribling. And to that I say, correct. Why? Because they have the same exact draft capital, and Jeremy Bernard has a much, much better bakery score and analytical profile than DeJon Stribling does. We're balancing two things, draft capital and profile. DeJon Stribling has the draft capital and the profile so bad, even with draft capital being the most heavily weighted factor in the bakery. Draft
the most
capital,
heaviest?
It's the most heaviest in the bakery. Even with that being true, his literally first pick of the second round draft capital brought him up to a tier where the hit rates are near zero. With Jeremy Bernard, he got second round draft capital and he's still in the upside tier. That's a big difference, guys. That's a huge difference. And so it's balancing profile and film, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. And also balancing draft capital. So yes, Jeremy Bernard, we're using the draft capital here not as the sole reason to elevate him, but as the tiebreaker. Because again, draft capital is not everything. We have Stribling ranked below third round wide receivers. Fact of the matter is, that's because his analytical profile's in the toilet. Jeremy's isn't, though. Jeremy has a solid profile, had decent film, not great film, but decent film, and got draft capital over guys that are being drafted over him right now in rookie drafts. And so this one's easy for me. I think the implied hit rate for a Jeremy Bernard, especially in a situation there in Pittsburgh where we have no clue who the quarterback's going to be there past this year. You also have Michael Pittman there, not going to be there super long-term. DK Metcalf wasn't super effective last year. They really don't have, I don't know, Jeremy does fit kind of a unique skill set there. I think they are in need of from a playmaking standpoint. And so for that reason, I just think in the mid-second round, I think he's a good shot to take with the draft capital he got, the situation not being as bad as people thought. And again, the second round this year is literally just take whoever you want, take your guys. Jeremy's a guy that we've taken consistently, and we have him ranked a little bit higher than consensus because not only we're respecting the combination of the draft capital and the profile, which he has. Again, when you're looking at this year, just at this class, at second round picks in the bakery, the only second round wide receivers we had go were Jeremy Bernard and DeJon Stribling, and he is ranked far higher from a profile perspective than DeJon Stribling is, and he had better film in my opinion. So that being said, I think that's why we'll make a case for Jeremy and not Stribling. I think Jeremy is one of the better picks this year, simply because I think he's being a little bit slept on right now. I think it might be the landing spot, and we have to remember that it's not the same landing spot that we've always had there in Pittsburgh.
No, and the next guy we're going to have here is Carson Beck. This is another one that's very draft class conditional. And very situationally dependent as well in Arizona. I think everyone was heading into this year. Everyone was heading into the 2026 NFL draft expecting Arizona to be one of the top two players to go ahead and take Ty Simpson in the first round if he was going to go in the first round. It was Arizona and it was Pittsburgh, sprinkle in a little bit of the Jets as well. No one thought the Rams were in the cards to get Ty Simpson whatsoever. So that happens. Again, we'll never know if Arizona was actually intending to trade up into the late first, like a lot of people expected them to. We'll never know. That being said, it's all in the books. It's all done now. They ended up taking a third round shot on Carson Beck instead. Carson Beck started getting some buzz right before the draft started, the week of the draft, saying that Carson Beck could be a candidate to go in the second round and be one of the first QBs not named Simpson and Fernando off the board. And that noise ended up being semi-correct. He didn't go in the second. He went in the third. He was the first quarterback off the board there after those top two guys. And again, this is one where you're going to have everyone and their mom is going to tell you the hit rates for third round quarterbacks are awful. The hit rates for third round quarterbacks are terrible. Analytically, you should never do it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No crap. The analytics for everybody going in the same range as Carson Beck at the late second in this year's class are just as bad as Carson Beck. I'm dead serious.
Yes, they are.
I'm not kidding. Again, we've backed this up multiple times, and we can dive into it more. But here's what I can also tell you about third round quarterbacks. If a third round quarterback who's drafted in the third round in the NFL ends up going to a situation where it is a wide open quarterback room, where he has a chance to be the starter for any bit of time in the regular season, it is an automatic value win. Automatic. Again, we said the same thing about Tyler Shuck last year. Technically, let's be optimistic and let's assume that Tyler Shuck hit. He technically hasn't even hit yet, but let's assume that he hit. Let's assume that he defied the odds as a second round pick and he ended up hitting. He, again, as a second round pick in the NFL, technically defy the odds. The data for second round quarterbacks is really, really poor to a point where it did not favor Tyler Shuck. We were taking Tyler Shuck in the 3rd round of our rookie drafts last year, left and right, because it did not matter what the analytics said about a 2nd round quarterback. The fact of the matter was Spencer Rattler was slated to be the starting quarterback for New Orleans that year, and we knew that at some point in the season, Shuck was going to be the starter, and his value would automatically increase by at least 20%. And it did, and it increased even more. We got really fortunate there, but it did. We're not saying the same thing's going to happen with Beck this year, but that's the baseline expectation that you have for a guy who is going to get a starting opportunity. 32 quarterbacks, yes, 32 quarterbacks are starters at the NFL level every single year. There usually end up being about like 38 guys that start any given year, 38 to 40 guys. Anytime one of those quarterbacks in an ambiguous quarterback room gets an opportunity to start, they gain value. Aiden O'Connell wasn't even a 3rd round quarterback. He was a 5th round quarterback playing behind, I don't even remember at that point in time who he was playing with. But he got his opportunity. And if you remember at a point in time, Aiden O'Connell had 2nd round value. 2nd round rookie draft capital value in your Dynasty rookie drafts. Because you had some people in your league that were believers in what they saw in the small sample size with Aiden O'Connell and were like, oh, well, heading into this next year, if they don't draft a quarterback, he's going to be the starter again. Starting quarterbacks are invaluable for contending teams heading into the season. Because again, once we get to the season, yes, 32 quarterbacks are starting in Superflex formats, but really the only startable guys, you're talking about no more than like 20 that you really want to be starting every single week. Jacoby Brissett was one of those guys last year, and if you shipped him off while he was a starter, if you were lucky, you got a 2nd for him from a contending team that was desperate. Again, this is something that will happen this year. If you have a team that is dependent on a quarterback that isn't looking very good at their QB2 spot, or maybe they have Jacoby Brissett, but they didn't get Carson Beck, if Brissett's benched, they will pay up for Beck when he starts, and he will. They will give him an opportunity this year. The Cardinals are slated to be one of the worst teams in the NFL this year, probably looking to draft a quarterback in 2027. But in the short run, you can flip him when he starts because someone in your league will be sold on him. Someone in your league will be sold on him, independent of the analytics and independent of the hit rates. So that's why he's one of the better picks at the end of the 2nd this year.
And finally, our baby boy. And actually, it's just so funny, man. Like, you know, as far as I'm plugged in like, I try to watch other Dynasty content creators that, number one, so we don't live in a bubble. Number two, to try to support our colleagues as we all try to make Dynasty content. I can't catch all of it, but I do know that, you know, Zach from Dynastyland was a big Surratt guy. He's in our comments on our live streams talking about Surratt. I know that Corey from FSC and Danny were both big Surratt guys. So in my little flock universe, I know that Surratt was being, you know, pretty highly touted, and I was obviously had him as my guy. We all loved him. And he went in the 4th round. And what's funny is I feel like the hype
went lower
now,
than all of us expected.
I think now, like, the hype is more with Elijah Surratt than it even was before. Mm-hmm. I think part of this is because I think he has a very specific use case in the NFL. I think the Ravens need that use case, and I think they're going to use him accordingly.
Yep.
I think if that is the case, and again, you're drafting this guy late 2nd, early 3rd, those picks are worthless this year. They're not worth anything. And so you are taking your favorite player. I've taken a Surratt mid-2nd this year just to diversify, so I have shares.
You may as well take your shot on Surratt in the 2nd this year. You may as well.
With Surratt, I like the landing spot there. Again, if he profiles as a big slot, that's how he's going to be the most successful. Pretty good zone beater in the NFL, so if they do run him as a big slot, you know, running routes to where he does have some yak ability as well. I think the Ravens need somebody like that, right? When you look at how Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman are used, has never really had an issue between the 20s, pushing the ball down the field in the intermediate to deep parts of the field. That's not been an issue with those two guys. I think the issue has been, you know, the tight ends have somewhat played a role in that, you know, short to intermediate range of the field between the 20s, and in the red zone. But at the same time, like, you know, I feel like Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely have been their best 2 red zone threats there in the last couple of years. Like, when they've gotten in the red zone, they've had very little wide receiver production. And that's where a guy like Elijah Surratt can be very valuable for the Ravens. And so I think they drafted him. I also think, again, he's a pro. He's a good locker room guy. I think from a tape perspective, his tape's very good. He has a huge production profile from college. So I'm going to bet on Surratt. He's one of my favorite guys to draft this year, and it's a my guy again, but at the same time, we love him, and he looks good in a Ravens jersey. So there you go. Those are our 7 best picks this year for Dynasty Rookie Drafts. Drop a like on this video, and make sure you're subscribed if you enjoy the content. But these are guys hopefully we can hit at a little bit higher rate than last year. Hopefully we can try to navigate through some of the muddiness that is this class, and hopefully we can dominate our rookie draft. So we love you. We appreciate you. We'll see you here soon, guys.